Well, where should I start? At the beginning. That's a great idea. It was a beautiful night. It's Sunday evening in Dundas, South Dakota. The weather was just a little bit over 85 degrees. There was a cool breeze in the air. My cousin Ozzy and his girlfriend Hilda Norberg were sitting on the front porch watching the sunset. It was one of those perfect moments. Ozzy picked up his beer bottle, took a couple of big gulps, and then just out of nowhere he said, "I love you so much, I don't think I could live without you." And Hilda said, "Ozzy, is that you talking or the beer?" And Ozzy said, "That's me talking to the beer." Okay. Hey, listen, for a second today, I'd just kind of like to recall or review some of the things that we've talked about in the past. And that is the reason, the meaning, and the purpose for our existence. Why are we here? What is life all about? For each and every one of us, there was a day when we were born into this world. It was the beginning of our life. And for each and every one of us, there'll come a time when we'll leave this world. Our lives will be complete. It'll be the end of our lives. Well, from the beginning to the end, there is a line, so to speak, a timeline. We call it our lifetime. From beginning to end, we experience life. And the vast majority of our life is experienced by interacting and relating to the world around us. People, places, things. Perhaps it's something on TV, whatever it is, we're constantly relating back and forth to the world around us. Relationships are everything. You cannot think of a single thing in your life that doesn't involve a relationship, whether it's a relationship with yourself, a relationship with God, a relationship with other people, other things, other places. Everything is relationship, and the quality of your life, the happiness of your life, the wellness of your life is identical. It is equal to the quality of your relationships. Everything revolves around how we relate to the world. Now, we eagerly engage in this interaction and this relating because we have this deep inherent need to connect. You know, we're all alone in this world, each of us individually for the most part, and we have this desire to connect with other people, to get to know them, to be able to resonate with how they think and how they feel. Now, the problem is we're still students of life. We're not graduates of life. We're trying to learn how to do this. We're trying to learn how to relate in a peaceful, loving, harmonious way. And that is difficult. And it's difficult because there are 7 billion people in this world, and each and every person, that includes each and every one of us, has a different reality. Even brothers and sisters that were raised in the same family and had mostly the same experiences, they think different about certain things. To some degree, we are all alone in our own basic reality. And so it's very tough for me to connect with you in your reality if it's different than my reality, because we think differently. Not only do we think differently, but there are times when we think opposite of another person, and that leads to conflict sometimes, or a struggle in the relationship. We have Republicans and we have Democrats. We have Baptists and we have Jews. We have men and we have women. We have cats and we have dogs. Every reality has a certain difference to it that unless you're in that reality, you can't understand it. So when we try to relate or connect to other people in the field of thought or thinking, we're never going to get to that deep connection that we really desire. In order to get there, we have to shift from thinking to feeling. Our realities are all different when it comes to the thought-filled reality that we live in, but our realities are all the same when it comes to the emotional field that we live in, when it comes to the emotional provision that we've been given. It's exactly the same. Think of it this way. A big box of crayons. In the box, there's all sorts of different colors. Each color represents a different emotion. Love, anger, peace, joy, sadness, whatever it is, but we're all coloring from the same box. We're all using the same colors. Your purple is exactly the same as my purple, whatever emotion that represents. So when I move further past the thought and trying to relate and connect with you, if I discover how you feel, that makes all the difference in the world because I can identify with that feeling within me. I have felt that same way. When I'm experiencing a certain degree of sadness, it's exactly the same when you experience a degree of sadness. I know how you feel and you know how I feel. So in order to get that deep connection we need, we oftentimes have to move beyond all of the thought and all of the personality and all of the characterizations of other people and find out how they feel. Because that's when we can be one with them in that emotion. Now, I am not a friendly flyer. I don't fly easy. And I was on an airplane not too long ago. Well, actually, it was several years ago. I don't know when it was. I remember being on an airplane, okay? And I always get nervous just before takeoff. Because throughout my lifetime, I have seen dozens, if not hundreds, of TV programs or movies where a plane takes off, it's moving into the air, heading towards the heavens, and boom, it blows up. It's just gone in a minute. So every time I sit there on the runway, I think that's going to happen. I envision it in my mind. I know it's going to happen. And then I move to the point, well, if I think this enough, it's going to happen, so I have to think about something else, but I can't. I just have an anxiety when it comes to flying. So here we are on the runway, we're getting ready to take off, and this guy next to me nudges me and says, you know, this plane has 305,000 parts to it. That's mind-boggling. And then he says, if any one of those parts is faulty, or if it was installed wrongfully, this bird's going down. I pushed the stewardess button, the flight attendant's button. I need a drink. You can't have a drink till we get into the air. So we're rumbling down the runway. And you know how it is. The plane starts to shake. There's a lot of noise going on. There's a lot of vibration. Things in the cabin are shaking. And I just know it's coming. I just know that it's coming. And the plane leaves the ground and it hits that mellow spot where everything becomes quiet and they begin to float on air. And all of a sudden, there's a loud, screeching sound. And it's coming from a crying baby that's about 3 rows ahead of me. After a while, that crying baby became worse than if the plane would have blown up. And the entire cabin was filled with this crying screech. And after about 5 or 6 minutes, complaints started to surface. People started to whisper, can't something be done? What's the mother doing? I can't put up with this thing as we go on this flight. Something's got to happen. The guy next door to me, Mr. Know-It-All, he suggested the mother take the baby outside for some fresh air. That's how bad it was. As time continues and the crying ceases to quiet down, a flight attendant starts going to every row, and she's saying something to people, and when she gets to my row, she says, the baby has an ear infection. And the pressurization of the cabin is really exacerbating the problem, and it's in terrific pain. By the time the flight attendant had got to the end of the plane, telling everybody this, the entire mood, the entire energy of everybody changed. They got out of myself, I want this, to, oh my God, that poor child, because they could identify with the earache and the pain. Everybody's had an earache of some sort or a headache or something, and you know if you've had that on an airplane, it can really be painful. So everybody immediately was able to connect and identify with the baby. And all of a sudden, people offered to help the mother out. Let me take the child for a moment. Or one mother brought over a pacifier that her child had had. And it was one united group after that to be with the baby in its time of pain. Now, I tell you this because as we go through life, we oftentimes run into people that are in a lot of pain. They've got problems. They're angry. Things happen during their childhood, and they're obnoxious, they're disturbing, they're disruptive, and we are right there in their presence. And they might complain all day long about what is wrong with their life, but we don't totally understand it because we're not in their reality. But as soon as we move closer and find out what exactly the emotion is they're experiencing and some of the details of it, we can empathize with them. And when I say empathize, we can identify what they're feeling with the feeling inside ourselves. In that moment, there's a connection, and in the connection, there is only love. That is the driving force. That is the motivation for us to interact, to relate, and to find the connection, because that's the only place we can find the greatest power in the universe, which is love. When I first went into recovery, a person was telling me gave me a metaphor about addiction and recovery. This is many, many years ago. And he said, when you're an addict, it is like falling down the side of a deep, dark pit. And the side of the pit are muddy and they're greasy and you can't stop yourself. You just slide down until you hit bottom and there you are. And then something happens and you decide, I'm better than this. You pick yourself up when you want to get out of the pit. And you start to claw at the side of the walls to get up. And you make a little progress, but then you slide down again. We call that relapse. But then you try again, and you try again. And it is difficult and it's hard, but finally you reach the top, you're able to pull yourself up, and you get out of the pit. Now at that point, you have three options. You hear somebody else at the bottom of the pit yelling, help me, I can't stand it down here. So you can have apathy, which is, I don't care about you, I am out, and I'm going about my way. Apathy is a disconcern for other people. It's all directed towards me, what I want. I want peace and quiet. I don't want a baby crying. The next one is sympathy. That's looking down the pit. I feel sorry. See you later. Sympathy isn't connecting either because we're still living in two different realities. There's the person that has the pain, that is suffering a loss, that is going through difficult times and their emotions. And then there is us over here saying, oh, I'm so sorry about that. I'm sorry. But I'm not connecting because I'm not identifying with the emotion within me that they're experiencing. Understanding another person's position. What is the old saying? John, you should know this. Walk in another man's moccasins. Like, you'd never know another man's life until you walked a mile in his moccasins. And that is so true. We have no idea what is going on with a lot of people out there. We have no idea what the history of their life has been and what they're going through right now. But if we see anger, or we see pain, or we see suffering, or we see sorrow of any sort, we know there is something that we do not understand about them. And understanding is everything. Relationships are everything in our life, and when it comes to relationships, understanding is everything in relationships. To be able to understand another person's position. There's a fellow named Giovanni Robani, I believe. Giovanni Roborni, something like that. And this goes back to the year 1206. And he was the 23-year-old son of a very, very wealthy merchant. And he liked to go to the Basilica at the Vatican and move through all the wonderful, beautiful things that are there. But he awakened to a huge contrast one time on his visit that in the Basilica there were beautiful mosaics and spiral columns and priceless pieces of art and all sorts of other precious things. It was just abundant with opulence in a very lavish style. But when he walked out the door, across the street, the wall was lined with people sitting down, begging for money. And he thought, how can this be? And at first he was irritated with the people. Can't they do this someplace else? Well, no, this is where the people are. Can't they get up? Can't they go have a job? No. He didn't understand what their condition was other than the fact that they needed money. So he came back the next day and he was dressed in rags and he had put smudging on his face so he looked like one of these beggars. He sat down with them with one of his bowls and he begged for an entire day. And in doing that, he realized that these people needed much, much more than money. These people needed to be recognized because they were invisible to most people that were walking by. They need to be received in some manner, whether it's a pleasant smile or a hello. And they need to have this pressure of day-to-day survival lifted from them. So Giovanni started a religious order that was dedicated to poverty and lepers. And the entire focus was for all the brothers that were involved in this, and himself as well, is to give up all their worldly possessions and call on those people that he knew to donate to the cause to help uplift these people. And that order is still going on today. He is known as St. Francis. And any Catholics in here, if you're not Catholic, you know the St. Francis Franciscan orders. There's 3 of them, and this is the origination of one of them. But it wasn't until he became one of them, until he realized what they were going through, until he realized the indignation and the embarrassment and even the shame to a certain extent that they experienced, that he, I can do something for these people. Understanding is everything. The story goes that in a dream, God appeared to King Solomon. And he says, whatever you want, I will give you. Tell me what you desire. And King Solomon said, above all else, I desire an understanding heart. And in Proverbs, it says, when you pray, ask for understanding, for it has a greater value than silver or gold. The one who has understanding will go beyond all other desires. So what I'm saying here today is that understanding is the key. We don't understand everything. I don't understand you in your reality, but I do understand you in your emotional state. And although we have different options wherever we go and whatever we're doing, one is to be apathetic, forget about it, I'm concerned about me and nobody else. The other one is to be sympathetic, which is sometimes nice and helpful, which is to feel sorry for other people. But it's not until we move in close and really reside in the same emotion that other people are experiencing that we really get that connection and we're really able to overcome all the other outer external distractions that prevent us from being there. Here's one more example before we go into meditation. I was watching America's Got Talent, and this little girl came out, and she was from a foreign country or something. She didn't have any arms. And as she came out, the audience and the faces on the judging panel, they all looked at her with this kind of sorrowfulness. They were sad. This poor little girl, what is she going to possibly do for us? And so they asked her, what are you going to do? And she says, I'm going to play the piano. He says, well, forgive me, but how are you going to play the piano? She says, I play the piano with my feet. He says, okay, let's see you. So the little girl goes over, she gets on the piano bench, she arranges herself as she needs to arrange herself to begin to play the piano. And as she did, it started out very simple and very elementary, but it continued to graduate into higher levels of expertise in the piano. And the greater the piece became, the greater the smile on her face became, and everybody in the audience switched from, oh, I'm so sorry for this girl, to resonating with her joy. They met her in the emotional field. Do you understand what I mean? They met her in the emotional field, and they weren't standing back and trying to determine what her life is like based on the external circumstances. Empathy is the word. When we empathize with somebody, we identify in ourselves the emotion that they're experiencing, and that is healing, and that is where we find love. So in a moment, we're going to go into meditation. John Two Hawks is going to do the meditation today with a beautiful piece on the flute. And I want you to think a little bit about your life. Are you apathetic at times? You just don't care about somebody else's problems? Are you sympathetic where you feel sorry, but you don't take that next step? Or are you empathetic where you can put your arms around somebody and not say a single word, just be with them in that emotion, that difficult emotion for them? We'll now move into meditation.